Hello, I am a little intimidated by the amount of books I have to pick up for that, but if you saw my thumbnail, I read 47 books in September, so we're gonna do a rapid fire review and hope it doesn't take too long. We're gonna be here for a little while, so I'd like to let you know in advance that you can always hit that subscribe button and like if you would like to, and we will get into the wrap up. So I will go over the readathons that I partook in at the end. I'm so sorry. I will have timestamps though, so you can skip to the end if you'd like. But honestly, I'm just gonna go over the stack of books that I have. It's like 3 feet tall. I'm not even kidding. Like, this is where my hand touches it and it's on a chair, but it's like 3 feet tall. So we're just gonna get into the books that I read for read-alongs, book clubs, buddy reads, the whole shebang, and just go into it. Okay, top book is not for any of those. Please don't fall. They're falling. Okay, anyways, this one is The Doctor's Bride by Pat Marr. This was on one of my old books that I needed to read eventually, and I figured I would read this. I was not feeling very well. I ended up getting a mild case of COVID in September, and I just was not too bad, but I was needing something light to read since I was stuck at home, and this was something light to read. So I picked it up. It was okay. Still have a lingering cough. I'm so sorry. Anyways, this was a 3-star for me. This one was about Zach and Chloe. And Zach is a doctor. Chloe worked with kids in overseas capacity, helping whenever there was a natural disaster or anything like that. And then she just recently came home and was becoming a speaker for that kind of thing, like helping out in different capacities, like helping others with that. And it was an okay book. It was an okay romance. Good. I felt like Chloe's character was great. Zach's character needed more development for me. So 3 stars. I'm glad I've read it. I'm going to unhaul it now. So I'm glad I can get it off my shelves. And it wasn't a bad book. It was just not a super memorable book for me. The next one that I have on the stack is Mary Roberts Rinehart. This is The Great Mistake. I purchased another copy or physical copy. I listened to this on audio though, which was great. This one I read with Kevy's group read. Say Kevy, I will link her channel down below. This one was great. This was a 5-star Mary Roberts Rinehart for me. I have loved discovering Mary Roberts Rinehart in the last 2-3 months. So brilliant. This one follows Pat. Yes, Pat Patricia, as she comes to this house and she meets this lovely family. Maud, I'm gonna try to remember names. Oh my goodness. I can't see her name in the thing, but I'm pretty sure it's Maud. Maud, she owns this wonderful big house and she has lots of money and lots of friends. She throws lots of parties. And then one day a body is found in her backyard. I don't really want to say too much more. She has a son named Tony, and Mary Roberts Rinehart's books are filled with kind of romance and suspense, and it is really fun. I really enjoyed this one and highly recommend it. It was the best one I've read yet. I've only read 3, I think, but they keep getting better and better, so I can't wait to pick up the next one that I read by Mary Roberts Rinehart. Next on the pile was another 5-star, and that was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This one I did not expect to love, but I flew through it. This one was brilliant. It was a sci-fi thriller from 1990. And like I said, didn't expect to love it. I never was a dinosaur-loving kid to my memory, but apparently I hit the bug now. So this one, obviously, if everyone doesn't know, follows several people as they go to Jurassic Park, where they're trying to create a dinosaur theme park. And things go terribly wrong. Because I had never watched the book or watched the movie or read the book before, I had no knowledge of what was going to happen, which was super fun. I never knew who was going to live, who was going to die. Basically, because the dinosaurs get loose, at a certain point, you just know that mass death is going to happen. But at the same time, it's just like, who's going to survive? Oh, I just thought it was so brilliant and so scary. It had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. 5 stars. We've got to move this along. Another one was His Texas Bride by Deb Kasner. This one is about Buck and Ellie. And Buck is a cowboy who has come back for his mother's funeral. Ellie rents from his mother, and she has a therapy farm or a therapy ranch, and Buck is determined to basically kick her out because he wants money from the ranch to start up his own ranch or to use that ranch land for himself. It was very short, and I felt like Ellie's character once again was well developed, but Buck's was not. I just felt like this could have been a bit longer, and then that would have been better. So it's a 3-star for me. Once again, very similar to the Texas Bride one. Good, but not memorable. So I'll be unhauling it. And it's in the same position where I just needed something to take my mind off of feeling overtired, but not being able to sleep. So I just read something light and easy, and it was one of my old books I needed to read. One of the book club books that I needed to read was from my Agatha Christie book club, which is The Man in the Brown Suit. We're reading them in chronological order. I don't know if I'll read next month, but this one was The Man in the Brown Suit. So I gave this one 4 stars like last time. I could not remember the whole plot of this one though, so it was a surprise. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. She tricked me again. So this was Agatha Christie's second published novel, and this was a Colonel Race one, but because it's such a new one to her, it was her second one, felt very much like an independent novel, and I really enjoyed reading this one. It was about Anne as she goes to basically try and create an adventure for herself. Her father just recently passed away at the beginning of this, and she wants to become a journalist. She stumbles across a mystery with this man in the brown suit and a murder. She's also trying to uncover what's going on with this code, and that takes her onto a boat ride to Africa. Super fun. I really enjoyed this, and yeah, I don't really want to say too much more. It's really interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading this audiobook, or ebook, I mean, because it is 100 years old now. It was published in 1920. I was able to get it for free as an ebook, but yeah, such a great one. And it shows how genius she was as, actually no, this is her 3rd book, sorry. Anyways, it shows her genius as a new writer, so really highly recommend. The next one on the stack is Song of the Highlands by Sharon Gillenwater. I wanted to reread this before I read the sequel. And this one is about a family that recently comes to London. So Kiernan, he is the new Earl of Brandery. He is recently acquired this property also during a game of poker. And when he goes there to inspect it, he comes across Mariah, who is very poor. She's like 27 years old, and she is very much a pariah of society, or she believes she is. And he brings her back to London because basically there's no choice. He's selling off the land, and he has her be a companion for his younger sister, Janine, and or a chaperone for his sister and a companion for his mother while he's trying to court her. I love their romance. Janine is also a very interesting character. We follow her as she meets several people throughout the season, and it's very, very good. It's quite a thick one, but actually not that bad, and I really enjoyed this one. It is not printed anymore, but it is an e-copy on Kindle, so I thoroughly enjoyed rereading this. I actually knocked it down a star because it didn't hold up to previous expectations, but that's okay. It's a 4-star. It's still really great, and I have started book 2 in the series. So then I read another Agatha Christie, which I actually read Cat Among the Pigeons. This is a Hercule Poirot novel, and it did not feel like a Hercule Poirot. It also felt like an independent novel, which was very frustrating because Hercule Poirot did not show up until literally a third left of the book, and that made me not like this one very much. This one follows a school where there is a teacher who is murdered on the property around, like on the, basically the courtyard, and they are trying to find some gems or some stones, some like jewelry. It's really kind of tied up into this international affair thing, and as much as I liked parts of it, it was all kind of bogged down by this, and at the same time I was reading The Man in the Brown Suit, which had many similar elements, and it felt like she was just reusing plot points, and so I did not really like that. I also felt like this was going nowhere for all of it, because it was also a Hercule Poirot novel, and Poirot was nowhere near this. I felt disconnected. The police, there was another person investigating, and suddenly Poirot shows up and he's like, oh, and this is how it all happened. It's like, you were not there. that's not how Poirot works. Poirot is there before the mystery happens, and then he solves it during the book. So 2 stars from me, unfortunately. It was a disappointment, but I at least have read this one now, and that'll be that. When I was sick, I discovered my library had several books that I was desperate to read or wanting to reread this author. So I grabbed them in ebook form because they were easier to read that way. So I reread the entire series of Tucker Mill Trilogy by Lori Wick. So this is Moonlight on the Mill Pond, Just Above a Whisper, and Leave a Candle Burning. So this whole series takes place in 1860s to 1870s in North America. I'm not sure exactly where it takes place, not maybe close to Boston, like East Coast. But Moonlight on the Mill Pond follows Jayci and Maddie, as Maddie's actually an older heroine, which is kind of interesting to read about. I forgot that. And she comes back, she's like 27, 29, I think. And Jayci, no, she's 27, I think, and Jayci is 25. And they have an interesting, turbulent connection as they are falling in love. These are all romances, so I feel like I'm not spoiling anything by saying that. This one, Just Above a Whisper, follows Connor, which I feel like has great representation for disability, as Connor, at the very beginning of the book, you discover that he as a child had his throat slit actually, so he cannot speak above a whisper. And so sometimes he can't actually speak. Also, he's very easily tired out and very chronic with that. So I feel like that's great representation. And also you have Reese, who is indentured. And so Connor comes to the town because the bank has kept Reese's papers after her, basically her owner has passed away. And so Connor comes to save the day, and then they end up growing closer together. Wonderful. And then Just Leave a Candle Burning is about Dr. McKay, or Dannon, as he has now come to Tucker Mills town, and he is the new doctor, and he has taken on this little girl who is his niece, and he is raising her on her own. And then you also have Scotty, who is recently widowed. Her husband was bedridden for many years, which I think is also great representation. And she knows literally nothing about female and male relationships. So great representation in the series. I think one thing about Lori Wick that I discovered, because I mean, I know this, but I also kind of rediscovered this month, is how well she does with just writing pain and parts of that, like simple parts of life into books, because all of these books had some form of that in everyday life. And even in the first one, Moonlight on the Mill Pond, we had heart attacks and things like that were simple, but also very present in the book. So really enjoyed these all. Moonlight on the Mill Pond got 4 stars and the other 2 got 5 stars for me. So yes, I recommend these a lot if you're interested in historical Christian romance. So the other Lori Wick series that I read was the Califorians, and this is the series, it's a series of 4, and this is Whatever Tomorrow Brings, As Time Goes By, Sean Donovan and the Donovan's daughter. So these also have great representation in some ways. These do not age as well as the other ones, but I still think that they're really great for representation, and they also are older too. So, I mean, you have to also look at that with a grain of salt. They are like 30 years old. So Whatever Tomorrow Brings follows Katie and Rig as he owns a mercantile, and Katie comes over with her family from Hawaii, and she becomes a school teacher. That one's really interesting, gave it 4 stars. The next one is As Time Goes By, where you have Bobby and Jeff. Bobby is a girl who cannot see like literally an inch off her face without her glasses, so I think that's great representation as well. Also, I do want to say that these covers whitewash them, because all of the Donovan children are very much darker skin toned, and they're talked about having very dark, like olivey skin and very dark hair and eyes. So I think that's really great to hear as well, even if the covers don't show that. So anyways, this one is also about Jeff, who is having some interesting relationship drama, and he is trying to figure out what life should be like actually with the girls that he wants to be like and who he wants to be with. And then you have Sean Donovan, which is about Sean, who is Katie's younger brother, and he has been living a life of crime, and suddenly he is offered a chance to be free when he's about to be literally hung, because this was taking place around 1870s, and the town that he is in actually has this clause where if a woman offers to marry him, then they can get married and he will be free. So that's what happens. He marries Charlie, and Charlie has suffered a lot of abuse in her childhood, and he therefore marries her and becomes a blacksmith, and it is wonderful. So 4 stars for this whole series. And Donovan's Daughter actually did get 5 stars from me. And this one follows Marcal as she's marries Alex, who is the town doctor. She's a school teacher in the new town that she is in. And there's a lot of difficulties in this book with her teaching, but one thing I really loved about this book is that she has headaches when it comes to putting up her hair every day, which is part of her teaching contract. And I had forgotten that this was a big part of this book because she is terrified of doctors. She doesn't mention it to her husband, but it is a really big part of her character that she suffers with this for this entirety of this book, whenever she wears up her hair for the part of her contract. So loved this series for nostalgia reasons, but also it doesn't always age well, but at the same time, I love how it has a lot of chronic issues mentioned, like a lot of physical difficulties. Also in Donovan's Daughter, Alex's mother is also bedridden for many years, and it is not mentioned obviously in a bad way. We have a lot of these kind of discussions, and I think that that's really wonderful to see just mentioned, not even like in a bad way of bypassing, but also this is like part of life. So great series for me to reread just when I was feeling like I just needed something to get on by. I also read Forest Green by Kate Pullinger. This one is a historical fiction that's set in BC, and it's about a man who is homeless in Vancouver, but it talks about how he grew up in the Okanagan area. This is where my grandparents have lived for many years in the Okanagan, and it is very interesting to read about this part of BC that I've been to many, many times as a child, and it is just something that I think it's so interesting to read about. I knew parts of this book that they're talking about, and it kind of goes from like the 1930s with the Depression era. It's very well researched and it's very intense in parts, and it's very small, but it's very easy to read and very quick to read. But then it also goes through the war and into very much into like modern day, after like he was found on the streets of Vancouver, very cold. That's what happens at the very beginning. And like almost dying essentially. So then it goes back to the very beginning. But yeah, very interesting book. I gave it 4 stars, and it's my book club book, so I needed to read it, but I was very, very engrossed in it. Once I picked it up, it was very hard for me to put down, and I don't really know what else to say. It's about Art, it talks about basically about how Art's life led him from being, you know, a child in a very well home, considering the Depression, all the way to being homeless in Vancouver. So yeah. Next, I read Tik-Tok of Oz by L. Frank Baum. I read this one specifically for Fall into Readathon because I wanted to check off middle grade. This one was much better than the previous one, which was whatever that one was, the Patchwork Girl of Oz. It was a lot more tight and a lot more concise. But at the beginning, I was feeling like, okay, where's this going? So this one follows several characters at the very beginning, as you are like following a group of people from a little far off land in Oz. And then you're following Shaggy, the Shaggy Man, and then you're following a girl and her mule as they're trying to go and find Shaggy's brother. And you also follow Tik-Tok. Tik-Tok's also comes there too. And they all kind of join forces together to go and find Tik-Tok's brother, or not Tik-Tok's brother, Shaggy's brother. And they end up going underground to the land of the gnomes and trying to find him. It was really interesting, and I ended up really enjoying it, and I gave it 4 stars. The series is picking up, and I am excited to continue on now. I have 6 books left for me to read, 7 books left in total. But I've already read the Tin Woodman of Oz, so I don't need to read that one again. I also read This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I almost forgot the author. This one I read with Jackie Reads and Writes. It was a buddy read, and I'm glad I've read it. It was nothing spectacular though. It's very character driven, and I was like, okay. This one's about Armory. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, to be honest, but anyways, Amory, he was okay. He was interesting. He was created that way by his mother, but at the same time, when he went off to school and he was doing all these stupid things, I was like, it's an interesting book. It wasn't hard to read, but at the same time, I felt like I didn't hate the book. Even if it's very reflective of F. Scott Fitzgerald's life up to this point. As much as I hated Tender as the Night, I didn't hate this. And I think what it comes down to, I've decided, is that I really love The Great Gatsby, but I don't like his other work. So I'm not in a big hurry to pick up The Beautiful and the Damned. I don't think I will. If I read any more from F. Scott Fitzgerald, it will only be short stories, I think. But aside from that, I'm glad I've read this, and I will be unhauling it now because I don't want to keep books on my shelves, even if they are classics that I won't reread. But I'm very thankful that I read it and discovered that I don't hate all of F. Scott Fitzgerald's work. It's just anything that's really self-reflective of his life, because I don't think I'd want to know him as a person if these two books are, you know, what he was like as a person, but not an awful book. It just really follows Amory's life as he's just a jerk to a lot of people. Yeah, but he was raised that way. So if he really was raised that way as a person, I would not want to know F. Scott Fitzgerald himself. So I don't know. Yes, but like I said, it was kind of just character driven and kind of boring in some regards, but not awful to read. So I don't know, 3 stars. I also read The Bride Test by Helen Hoang. I really enjoyed this one. This one has been kind of calling to me to read, and it was really fast-paced, really fun, and I enjoyed this one actually more than The Kiss Quotient. This one followed Esme as she has been approached by Kai's mother to come and be basically a mail order bride for Kai. She knows that it is not something that Kai wants, but she has doing her best because she wants to be giving her daughter a better life in America. And then she ends up falling for Kai. It's a romance. What else can I say? But I did really enjoy this one actually more. I felt like it was much more interesting to me than The Kiss Quotient, but I also thought that it was maybe in some ways a little bit better written. But anyways, I liked it a lot, and I am excited to read book 3. I think that Helen Hoang has a really good job of writing stories. I am not someone who really loves like smutty books, but these books don't have too much of it. Like the ones that are the steamy scenes, I can skip them, and they're not like littering every page. So that's why I am happy to read these books and keep going with them. So they're also not on every single second. So I'm very happy about that. I guess that should take us to Jayci Lee's The Dating Dare. I was asked to write a review about this after reading it, an honest review, and I got 35 pages in, or 35% in, and it was, I couldn't do it anymore. This one was sounding similar. However, when I was reading it, it just was over the top. Like every paragraph had a one-liner about sex or an innuendo in it, and that's not my kind of book. I wanted more plot. I wanted more than just innuendos and nonstop. So I could not do that. It was just not the book for me, so I had to put it down. I did write a review, and I hope that it's just not my kind of romance, and I hope that everyone understands why I had to DNF this arc. Thank you so much to the publisher, though, for giving it to me and asking me if I want to review it. I really wish I could have finished it. Hopefully everyone else who reads it will appreciate it, because it will be more their thing. Another book that I read was The Mystery by Jane Austen. This was a short story, and it was literally 1 act long. It was like 5 pages, but I thought it was so much fun. It is like a little thing that Jane Austen wrote, kind of like a play that she kind of maybe started. And it is just delightful for 5 little pages. But yeah, so this was what I read specifically for 30 books in 30 days, but it was fun to read one of Jane Austen's juvenilia. I also read The Lost Mine by Agatha Christie. This was a short story, a Hercule Poirot short story, and I gave it 2 stars. This one was very racist, and it had a lot of overtones of racism, and it had like a treasure map kind of thing, and it was not great. So I read it and gave it 2 stars. Not a good one by Agatha Christie, and unfortunately was not something I would recommend to people to read unless you're wanting to read all of Agatha Christie's work. That'd be the only reason I would recommend reading it. We are getting there. We're like, I don't know, maybe halfway, maybe almost 2/3. I'm not sure. Another book that I read was Jewel of the Nile by Tessa Afshar. This one was so good. I thoroughly loved this one, 5 stars. This one followed Charlene, and this one also followed Theo. I read this one at the beginning of the month, so it's been like 40 books in between, but I love this one. This one followed Charlene. She is the daughter of a Roman citizen. However, she is a woman. However, she's also the daughter of a Cushite, which is kind of a problem because she is then of mixed race. She is half black and half white, and she stands out. So she is trying to find someone of her heritage. She also is trying to find her father, and she is really struggling with this battle of parentage and identity the whole book. She also stows away on Theo's boat because she wants to go to Rome to find him, her father, and she's trying to find out what's going on. Theo is a character we've seen in a couple Tessa Afshar books, which you should read if you have not read them yet. Thief of Corinth and Daughter of Rome. And so good because Theo is a character that we've seen develop over those 2 books, and into this book it was wonderful to see him fully realized. And he is the captain of the ship, and he is basically at this decision of, do I take care of this girl and how do I take care of her? And it is a biblical fiction, kind of romance, definitely romance, but biblical fiction about this time, about basically the church growing and how it would have impacted all over the world and the Cushites, and it was just so wonderful. Also to see Priscilla and Aquila again. Yeah, really wonderful. The last Lori Wick book that I read, I promise, was For the Princess by Lori Wick. This one I read first actually, and that started this kick of Lori Wick. But this one is a modern day one about a girl named Shelby, Shelby, who marries this prince named Nicky, and she is basically in this arranged marriage because he needs to get married before he turns 26. And when they get married, they are kind of unknown to each other. In some ways, they do agree to it completely willingly. But when they enter into this marriage, they are really strangers. And so they have to figure out the marriage post getting to know each other, and like, or they have to get to know each other post marriage. And I think this is so great. It's such a different one than her historical fiction, and it's not in a series like most of her books are. So I really enjoyed this one, and I love rereading this one. I think I give this one 5 stars every time because it's just a different look at the book. It's like after the happily ever after, and yeah, also interesting to see how like a princess would have to learn to be a princess, kind of like Princess Diana or, Kate. All of these different princesses have to be brought into the royal family and then taught to be a royal. So I like that aspect too. Are we ready for the beast? I finished Les Misérables this month, which was fantastic. Yes, I did not read the whole thing this month. I read about that much. Maybe that much. This month, I read that much. But it was so fantastic to finish this off. 5 stars. I still need to film my final thoughts on this. I would have filmed that if I was not sick, but such is life. This one was literally, I do not know how to express myself with this. Yeah, I have live streams about them all in a playlist, which I will link for you. And my goodness, so many thoughts about this. So many things. This was such a undertaking, but I am so happy that I finally read Les Misérables, and I cannot believe that it still was amazing and powerful as I expected it to be, even more so. And yeah, I genuinely don't know what to say. Just 5 stars. It's incredible, and if you want to read it, I highly recommend doing it, because yeah, it's about Valjean as he goes through life after, leaving prison and just struggling to survive, and then, changing of identities and, really struggling to become himself. So that's, I think, all I can say with this without going into way too much of a summary. I also read The Borden Murders, Lizzie Borden and the Trial of the Century. This is by Sarah Miller, and it is an awesome nonfiction about how Lizzie Borden managed to either kill or not kill her parents. This is more about the trial itself and actually how the proceedings went. So each of these sections had little this, and this is actually a really interesting section. So this follows what an inquest is, what an arraignment is, and then what a preliminary hearing is, grand jury, trial, all the different steps of it, which I found really helpful. And then it went through step by step. So what happened the day of, who the Bordens were, what happened the day of, what happened when the inquest happened, the investigation, the inquest, and then different trials, and then what actually happened after all. So I really thoroughly love this. 5 stars. If you aren't at all interested into like the court case level or like the trial level of this, I would highly recommend checking this out. That's definitely something that I'm interested in, like the legal aspect, and I thoroughly thought this did a good job. I was left with no questions about what the evidence was, and then I had the choice whether Lizzie Borden did or not, and I personally think she didn't. But the evidence in here was pretty laid out, so it was like, did she do it or did she not? You get to choose. So, highly recommend. I also read The Girl Still Got It. This one is by Liz Curtis Higgs. This is a biblical nonfiction about the book of Ruth. It analyzes it verse by verse, and it was just really interesting, talking a lot about familial love, mother and daughter love, mother-daughter-in-law love, and a lot about how this book talks about redeeming, and a really modern take at it. So I really enjoyed this. I talked a lot more about this in my vlog, so I will link both my vlogs down below. But yeah, it's not long at all, and it was just really interesting. So I thought this was a great one if you are all interested in doing a book about the Book of Ruth. So I don't have the book I actually read, but I have book 2 here. I read book 1, March, by John Lewis, Andrew Aiden, and Nate Powell. And I really loved the book 1, so I got out book 2 right away, or as quickly as I could get it from my library. And so I will be reading book 2 very shortly. But I wanted to show you something at the very least. So book 1 was really interesting, and I thoroughly loved how John Lewis talked about his experience. This is a nonfiction graphic novel about John Lewis's experiences through the Civil War movement and how he really started on that journey of trying to challenge the different systems that were in place. So I thought it was really interesting and impactful. And as soon as it ended, I was like, you can't end there. I need to know more. So I got this one. I also have book 3, which is the final book in the series, waiting for me as well. So as soon as I finish it, I will be able to move on. I also want to show you the pictures. They're all kind of like this, very much in a black and white kind of picture, not picture, but pencil crayon kind of drawing, and I thought that that was really impactful as well, the choice to not do color, and I am excited to continue on. Next, we're going to talk about my last physical book to show you. I still have more ebooks, so don't worry, we're not done yet. But that is the Shakespeare. I have tons of Shakespeare to talk about, so let's get into this. The first one is Othello. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. I was terrified to read it, probably because of all the racially charged parts about it. But I found it to be really compelling, really tragic, and I found I found it to be just something really inspiring, and maybe not inspiring is the word, but really, really dramatic and tragic, and yeah, I'm really glad that I read it. I read all of Shakespeare, by the way. I posted a video about my experience reading the finishing off of Shakespeare, all of his work, and that was one of my last ones I had to read. So I finished Othello. I also read All's Well That Ends Well, and All's Well That Ends Well was okay. It was funny in parts, but in other parts I was like, this is just not my cup of tea. So I gave it 3 stars. It is a comedy though, and so I just was like, whatever. It's one of those things about me. Shakespeare's comedies can be really hit or like just an okay thing. That was the same thing for The Merchant of Venice, which I also gave 3 stars to. I found the racial slurs really hard to get over, the racial parts about it. And I'm going to kind of spoil what the racial part that really bugged me about it was right now. So if you don't know the racial, or if you don't care about knowing the end of it, I'll just tell you now. So here's a little spoiler bit about the Merchant of Venice. I was really disturbed at the end when they forced him to give up being a Jew and they took away all of his things and they forced the cross on him. I was really disturbed by that, and I know that that's very much reflective of the times, but I was like, I can't give you a good rating because of that, so I gave it 3 stars. It was just all about those things, and it was very clearly an anti-Jew play, so could not handle that. But yes, so 3 stars for Merchant of Venice. I also read Love's Labour's Lost, which I gave 4 stars to. I thought that one was quite funny. That comedy with the different matchings of the all-male court and then the all-female court coming to talk to them. I enjoyed that one a lot more, and I thought that one was quite enjoyable for the most part. But yes, that one definitely was better off in the comedy department for me. I thought it was a lot more reflective of my sense of humor than the other ones were. Also, it might just be how late he wrote in life. I'm not sure how late he wrote in life, but I just preferred it more. I'm gonna have to look at this, but I also read Venus and Adonis, The Rape of Lucrece, The Passionate Pilgrim, Sonnets of Sundry, and then also the Phoenix and the Turtle. All of the little poems or little poetry ones at the end I read, and I gave that whole collection a total of 4 stars. There were some that I really loved and some that, like Venus and Adonis, I really didn't like. That one gave 2 stars, so that kind of bogged down the rest. But overall, I thought it was a really interesting to see his just poetry, just straight poetry, which are kind of funny. And it was, yeah, pretty good. I enjoyed it. And it was nice to see just kind of that straight aspect, because sometimes his poetry was in books or plays, but it was nice to see just the poetry and not the plays, like them separated. Next was Troilus and Cressida, which I gave 3 stars to. It was okay. It just wasn't memorable, and it was a history play, but at the same time, it just was like a lot of fighting and a lot of war, but it was not memorable to me, so I definitely just, gave it 3 stars. I might need to reread it, but that's the rating for now. The next one was Pericles, which I gave 3 stars to as well. This one was very interesting. It had some really high moments and really low moments. So as a middle ground, I gave it 3 stars. I feel like I really enjoyed some aspects, being some of the humor, but also some of the tragedy parts. But then some of it, I was like, you just pushed it too far. So I was like not impressed with all of it. But yeah, that one was a little more interesting. I feel like Shakespeare might have pushed the envelope a little too much, at least for me, with Pericles. So yeah, I really don't know what to do with that one still. I'm still confused with how that one ended up in some ways. Oh well. Next, I also watched Titus Andronicus, and that one got 4 stars. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed that one. It was very gory, but I really enjoyed it, actually. Still sounds so wrong to say. I talked about in my vlog how much that sounds wrong, but it is what it is. Yeah, I really actually liked how tragic that one was, and how that one just spoke to revenge, and how the characters were just trying to do what's best, but at the same time so misguided, and the villainous queen and the villainous characters. Yeah, it was just an interesting one, but at the same time, I could not help that I could not look away in a good way, at the same time as it was like just creepy, but I was like, anyways, yeah, Titus Andronicus got 4 stars. The Two Gentlemen of Verona got 2 stars. It was just very forgettable, and honestly, I was like, I know I listened to the whole thing. I just don't remember anything about it, and that's kind of where I was at. I was like, I knew I was paying attention. I just don't remember anything about it. So I might need to re-listen to it, but I was just kind of like, oh well. So yeah, I'm kind of like whatever about that one. But it was just kind of you could tell it was a debut play, I guess. Henry VIII was my second to last Shakespeare play, and that one was a 3 star. I thought that one was kind of boring, but at the same time, I thought it was more interesting because of the fact that it was Elizabeth's father that he was writing about. So that would definitely play into his aspects of writing the play. And also the fact that it was very much a bantering to her, or very much a petting her ego kind of play, I could tell. And then my last one was Cymbeline, which I loved, gave 5 stars. Very complicated play, but I thoroughly enjoyed that one. It had everything I wanted, with long lost love and very dramatic aspects. The tragedy, there was funny moments too. It was very much a thing like with everything, but I loved it. So 5 stars for Cymbeline. So now we're gonna get into the ebooks and the audiobooks that I don't have physical copies for. So I will try to get through these as fast as possible. So the first thing that I have are the books of the Bible that I read. So those would be 2 Samuel and 1 Kings. I managed to finish both of them in the month, and those were great. I really enjoyed them. I give them both 5 stars. I love those history books of the Bible. And I also read the next 2 books in the Eve Ronin series, which are Bone Canyon and Gated Prey. And these ones I really enjoyed. I gave them both 5 stars. So Bone Canyon is about Eve Ronin, who has to go to a crime scene, essentially. She comes across this scene where a wildfire had gone through, and when it went through, it revealed a bunch of bones. And so they are trying to sift through and try to figure out how many bodies are there, and if it was murder or just an accident, or what the bodies are, essentially. And they're trying to figure that out. It is really interesting, and I really enjoyed that mystery. It also definitely goes into the politics of the sheriff's office, and Eve Ronin being like, I don't care who I offend anymore. Really enjoyable. So good. Yeah, 5 stars. And I love how it's never as simple as it looks. So yeah, really recommend. In book 3, which I was super happy to read as an arc, Eve and her partner Duncan are undercover trying to stop these burglaries and these home invasions. And so she and Duncan are there trying to basically ward off these new home invaders, and no help comes. So then they have to basically do a shootout. And when they do that, they are trying to save their lives. And they realize that things aren't as simple as they look. And Eve is trying to do her best to solve what might be a really convoluted problem. I thought it was so good, and this one was so brilliant, and you should really check it out. It comes out in October, I think it is. You should just check it out. I'll have the date here, but man, so good. I highly recommend checking out this series. And I can't wait to see if there's a 4th book. And if there's not a 4th book, I'll be very disappointed, because honestly, this is like one of my new favorite series to read. And I love the characters. I love all the side characters. I love the main characters. Oh my goodness. Eve Ronin's the best. So then I read a poetry collection called Gently Planted by Ruth Marie Patterson. And this one I really enjoyed. I gave it 5 stars. It's a Christian poetry collection, so it's all about your faith and also about identity. And I really enjoyed this one. It was something that I really needed when I was just kind of feeling low. And yeah, really enjoyed this one. And I highly recommend this poetry collection if you are all interested in that kind of thing, spiritual poetry. Check out Gently Planted. Yeah, really recommend, 5 stars. I also read 5-minute bedtime stories or bedtime Christmas stories for kids. This is by Renee Bumbar Green. I read this as an arc, and it came out in September, but it is a great Christmas story collection for you if you are looking for Christmas bedtime stories for your kids or Christmas stories in general. This was about 200 pages worth of really quality Christmas stories, and they covered everything from, you know, Mary on the donkey to prophecies of the old times to the wise men going to visit Jesus as a toddler. All of these things were covered in this 200-page book, and I thought it was really well done. And I am actually looking into getting it for my own work and sending it to my niece and nephews. I think it is really high quality and really a standard book that you should pick up. So I did review it in my video, my vlog, but I also put out a review on Goodreads. I also read The Bounty. This is by Janet Ivanovich and Steve Hamilton. This one was book 7 in the O'Hare and Fox series, or the Fox and O'Hare series, whatever the series is called. This one was better than book 6, and like I said before, it's not a high bar to beat. This one followed them as they were trying to find an old Nazi map and like to go find Nazi gold, and that's all I really want to say. It was not the Lee Goldberg standard, because he wrote the first 5 books with Janet Ivanovich, but it was better than book 6, which had no one but Janet Ivanovich and her son, which, I mean, it wasn't the worst book I've ever read, but it was just not great. So this was a 4-star book for me. It had action, it had adventure, but the characters were not the same as I know and love them to be. So it is what it is. But yes, 4 stars. It was very much action and adventure, and I will read another book potentially if it comes out. I don't know if I will read it for sure though. We will see. I also read Lost and Found in Cedar Cove. This is by Debbie McComber. This is like 1.5 in the Rose Harbor series, which I really enjoyed this book. I wanted to read a novella and try out her work, and it was really worth it, I found. It was like not even that long. It was 35 pages, 36 pages, and it was something that I was able to get a grasp on her writing style and think, this is the kind of a book I would like to read or read more of. It was about basically this little town, and the bed and breakfast owner, her dog goes missing, and the people who kind of look for her dog. That was basically the little story, and it was just really cute, and I got to see the town a little bit, and I am excited to read more from Debbie McComber. I did give it 4 stars for being a short story. I also read Rider of Lost Creek, which is the first book in the Kilkenny series by Louise L'Amour, and this one I gave 5 stars to. This one's a Western mystery. I didn't know that going in, but this one was so good because it was like Kilkenny being this amazing detective sleuth person in the Western world, and he was just like trying to solve a mystery, but at the same time he was just a lone ranger trying to do his own thing, and he didn't want to get too involved. But once I started reading, I couldn't put it down, and I was just like hooked on Kilkenny, and I really want to read more in this series, but I basically want to binge the series, so I don't want to have anything else distracting me when I pick up book 2 and the rest of the series. The next thing that I read, I'm gonna have to read the whole title, is Scarlet's Hidden Harlots and Heroines, Women's Role in Scottish Society from 1690 to 1969. This is by Annie Harrower-Grey. Okay, so this one was basically just nonfiction, like it said, about Scotland's history of women. And it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. It was something I've been reading for a while. I had started a long time ago, and I picked it up trying to finish it, and it was like, okay, there were sections that were easy to read, and then other sections it was like, we don't have enough information here. But it was like, we're moving on, let's keep going. And some sections were really fascinating. The earlier sections were really fascinating, but then other sections would just be like one chapter, it'd be like this whole chapter would be like, we're dedicating this chapter to this era, and then it'd be about one woman. It's like, why don't you just name that section about that woman? Like, call the chapter her name. I didn't get it. And so certain sections were not long enough, and then certain sections didn't have enough information, and certain sections were too long in some regards or too over the top. But then other things were great. So I'm giving it 3 stars. It was interesting about Scotland's history and the women who were there as opposed to just the men. So I was okay with that. I'm giving it 3 stars. I also should say that I DNF'd River God, which is by Wilbur Smith, and I started that at the beginning of the month, and I just couldn't get anything past like 85 pages, so I did give it a shot, and I DNF'd that this month as well. It was just way too gory for me to read, which is funny after saying Tyson Johnson got 4 stars, but I couldn't go through 700 pages worth of that. So in regards to the readathons, I'm going to go over all of them right now. So we're finally done all the books. So in regards to the magical readathon Aurelium, I finished all of the prompts that I wanted to. So for the nonfiction, I read 2 Samuel. For a school setting, I read Cat Among the Pigeons. This is just how I drew them out of my mug, so I know they're not in the right order. For a series, I read March Book 1. For a 5-star prediction, I read Jewel of the Nile. For a city setting, I read Merchant of Venice. For a mystery, I read The Lost Mine. For tempting, I read Gently Planted. And then for a book with a map, I read The Borden Murders. For a supernatural book, I read the Venus and Adonis poem. And then for a standalone, I read Othello. For Bookopoly, I read a book that had to do with humans, and I read Othello. And then for a TBR game, I read 2 Samuel, since that worked for my other one. For myth, lore, or legend, I read The Borden Murders, because it's definitely a legend. For feed scroll, I read Jurassic Park. And then for highest rated, I read The Girl Still Got It. For a book about humans, I read Jewel of the Nile. For a new book, I read Gently Planted. For spooky, I read Bone Canyon. For series September, I read the start of a series, which is Whatever Tomorrow Brings. For 2 books in a series, I read many 6 books in a series. I read all 3 books in the Tucker Mills series. I read all 4 books in the Califorian series. I finished 2 books in the Ronin series. I nailed that. I also read my newest purchase, which was Whatever Tomorrow Brings. I also finished a book with more than 5 books in a series, which could also be Wizard of Oz, because I did read Tik-Tok of Oz, and I read Bounty, so that one counts. To finish a series, I read the most recent Eve Ronin, but I also finished 2 Lori Wick series. To read a book that's the second book in a series, I read Bone Canyon. I also read A Tale as Time Goes By and Just Above a Whisper. In a duology, I read the I read Jurassic Park, which is in a duology, and the most recently started one, which is Eve Ronin. And then for more than a year since I've read the book series, I read The Bounty. And then for 30 books in 30 days, which is the readathon I was hosting, saving the best for last, I had the aim to read 10 Shakespeare plays, which I did. I also read all of his poetry that was left in my big book. So that was kind of 11 things I read by him. So we're gonna count it. Then I also had to read 10 genres, and I was going for 10 mystery short stories, but I ended up reading 10 physical big mysteries themselves. So aside from maybe the mystery by Jane Austen. So I'm gonna count them. And yes, I did read 10 mysteries. I also read 10 books set in the US, and then I also read, I also read a book that was over 30 years old, which I've read several classics this month. And I've also read a book that was written by someone under 30, which was Jane Austen. And the final challenge was to read a book between 30 and 39 pages, and I did read Lost and Found in Cedar Cove, which was 36 pages. So all of the challenges were checked off, and I managed to finally do all of them. I was kind of scared that I wouldn't get to all of the settings, and then I realized that I had 10 books set in the US, so I was good on that. So my phone actually decided to not work because we've been talking for so long. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down in the comments if you have read a lot this month or if you just enjoyed your reading and read 1 book. Please also let me know down below what your favorite book was, and if you participated in any readathon. You can also like and subscribe if you would like to, and you can always hit that notification bell, and I will see you next time in another video. Bye for now.